Good afternoon. This is the Roar webinar series, and I have with me Lisette Garcia. Lisette Garcia, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you, Fina, for inviting me. It's an honor. It really is.
So you said Fina. Most people know me as Josefina. Actually, everybody knows me as Fina.
Josefina, aka Fina. I'm well, thank you. It's been a wonderful journey. Happy to see your face. And I'm super excited about these seminars.
Thank you.
Webinars, sorry.
Webinars, yeah, seminars, webinars. So lots to talk about. You and I met years ago. Actually, you helped me found Color Magazine. And we worked very hard those first few years. We won't go into those type of details, but thank you, because you're instrumental in making it successful.
Oh my gosh, it's one of those non-regretful moments in my life where I think of, to this day, if Fina could do it, I can do it. It's the fact that the idea came out and you were able to create it with just a little bit of support. It's incredible what support and collaboration does. So I thank you for allowing me to be part of it, because that's how it feels on my end, at least. So yeah, so we've gone through a lot together.
We have, and now the new iteration is you are in this mobility space. And I want you to tell us what is mobility, micromobility?
Yeah, it's a new term that's gotten a lot of, interest lately. So micromobility means micro, a small vehicle that contains one or two people, and mobility meaning that it's in motion. So typically micromobility refers to, and a lot of the urban planners and city planners use it to coin bike share or scooter share or hoverboard share, anything that is a moving item that moves people around. So you wouldn't call bus micromobility because it's a big, piece of equipment. So small electric cars, electric pedal assist vehicles, from scooters to bikes. So I think started, if you think from the beginning, it started with bike share. And I think that like city bikes started it, and nobody really understood it until it became a need for first and last mile solutions. And so micromobility shifted from a concept to a utility piece in people's lives. So it's been an interesting journey, because as you know, after Color, I came back to Miami and I started working for a car share company, which is in a way a shared use vehicle, and it's in a way micromobility because it was a smart car, although it was combustion, but it was, you share your vehicle. And in Miami, people thought, oh, wait, are you selling a car? And it just shifted people's perceptions. And then then the ride share piece came in, and Uber and Lyft changed people's perspectives on being able to not need a car or get in a taxi. So it is basically a shared use mobility device. So from a car, which is driven by someone else, or something that you rent and use on your own. So yeah, I hope that makes sense.
It does. I have seen more and more bike shares than ever, and scooter shares. Before you really didn't see it,
right?
But I've seen it more and more, and I've been attracted to it. So I've been looking at them and thinking, oh, I should grab one of these bikes and go for a ride, because especially if you live in a small space, you don't want to have a space for your bike. Why not?
Right.
Is that the concept behind it? Is that why it's grown so much?
I think that's a great perspective. Like, I think I asked you the other day, like, are you going to get a bike? Right? Because instead of buying one, and it mostly started in the university landscape, because students would come into campus and leave their bikes and didn't use them, But if they knew that they were going to be sharing a bike, there would be more utility of it. More people would use it. But yeah, usually it meant in the large city core, where like if you're New York, Boston, and bigger cities where your space is small, you use something that you can share. That's one piece. And the second one is a lot of people can't afford a car. A lot of people that use a bus need the first last mile kind of transportation option. So if you use a bus, right, let's say like me in Florida, if I use a bus, I'm going to wait forever. Then I'm going to melt. But most importantly, I have an option. So I get on the bus that takes me to the train, that takes me to my stop. Once I get there, I have to figure out what my last mile, first mile kind of solution is. So that is the second piece to it. And now, because of COVID-19, aside from the shift in this market, because it's changed altogether, and that's something else I'll cover if asked. But now, because of the social distancing, people don't want to get on a bus. So bike share and scooter share serves as a solution to this pandemic. Aside from the cabin fever, that people are like, I can't be inside the house. So bike sales have, like, there are no bikes to be sold. Yeah. So now people see the use of it more as a result of something negative, but yeah, it's just viable. But before, people didn't know what to use it for, and now people understand it because of all this bike share companies that have come in and have left. I worked for one that was like, it was dockless, so they would just use it, find it on the app, and leave it anywhere. So that, so I think now, moving forward, it's all going back to, it needs to belong in a place.
Which it makes sense, because I remember driving around and seeing all these little green bikes left kind of on the sidewalk, on just inappropriate places. And I don't even know do they have a GPS tracking system on these things?
Yeah, so when it first, so what you remember, right, is the city bike.
Yes.
Or in Boston, I think it was called something else in Boston, right?
Yeah.
And the cities would have to pay for equipment, and then they would get an operator that would run it. That's how initially it started. And then this dockless bike share, which I was part of, and one of the startups called OFO, they came in and said to the cities and universities, it's free for you, and it's dockless, and all of the bikes have a GPS in the bike. But however, people were so smart that they knew how to open the bike and keep a free bike for themselves. Hence them not, a lot of companies not staying in business, but also because it changed. So in order to run a bike share, it costs more money, but scooters are less expensive. So scooter share now becomes another source of transportation, which is another like world altogether. But yeah, now those companies that would leave, like if I took a bike and I left it in front of my house, the company would get alerted and said, hold that bike somewhere else. So the rebalancing team, there's the fleet team that would picks it up, hopefully finds it not in someone's apartment,
right.
finds it outside, and they're able to recover that bicycle. But a lot of the times they weren't able to. So
wow, I hadn't thought about, I was only thinking about when we were talking about this, the shared bikes or the shared scooters. I was simply thinking health-wise, what a great opportunity to start getting healthy, especially, not only in the pandemic where you're kind of, stuck in your house, and maybe you're not able to exercise, or you don't want to exercise in the same place that you're sleeping or whatever. So this creates an opportunity. I didn't think about how some folks are not able to afford, or parking is an issue, right?
That's right.
So maybe you can't afford to have a car, but in Boston in particular, you're paying so much money for a parking spot. So then again, it negates the need to have a car.
Yeah. Then there's the other side of, okay, so the need is identified and there's a solution. And then the cities have their like share of issues, because then there's infrastructure. So if these the company I work for instance, Gotcha, if Gotcha goes into a city and they pay a certain permit fee, our hope is that that money is used for infrastructure, so that whatever micromobility device is used, at least it's in a space where it's a little bit more safe. So that's just like the evolution of the micromobility into planning and infrastructure, which is another world altogether. But the fact that health piece, right? So I met a gentleman who said, you know, I never was on a bike before, but I got on an e-assist bike, and he was very heavy, and he didn't feel like biking was good for his. He just didn't have the stamina, so he got on an e-assist bike, and because he was outside, he started to use it so much that by default he lost weight. And now he's this advocate for bike share or just biking in and of itself, because, you know, I'm sorry, but biking for me is like the example of me having my first wings. You know, I was never home. I was like, I'm out of here. I was like, I'm gonna ride my bike until the sun comes down. And I think that's true for some people, but for some people, they've never ridden a bike before. So
I haven't ridden a bike in so long. And I'm looking forward to, as you know, I'm spending a few weeks in Fort Lauderdale.
mhm,
And I'm looking forward to, there's a place down the street that I plan on using their bikes, but it hadn't really come to my, to my being until talking with you, looking at it, looking at how many people are biking.
mhm,
And for my kids, my two sons,
that's
that's an
right.
option for them, as you say, to have wings, to be able to just go places without having to stay in one particular spot.
Yeah. And a lot of the smaller retailers, when we go into cities, we try to say, you know, we're not taking away from bike sales or the bike shops. We're hoping that because people are using more micromobility, right, bike, scooter, that more sales will ensue, so that those smaller retailers also get a benefit of it. So it's like we wanted to, I think I'm talking as an aggregate, ideally, it's an option for economic success within people that don't have access to transportation. They can get to a job. A lot of people in the service industry, that the bus system closes at a specific time, at least they can have a bike. And if they're going to leave their bike in front of their house, I'm pretty sure they'll be able to pay the out of hub fee, which exists in some of the
Mhm.
operators schematics. But I think it's great that at least we're here, because before you would think, oh, I have to buy a bike, right? Or how about the younger generation? I mean, not only younger generation, but the predominantly younger generation uses scooter share. And, you know, because
Right?
that's what they knew. I had a bike, but when you're little, you have one of those
Yeah.
little scooters. And now that's going to change to eventually, I see a whole bunch of kids on hoverboards that are electric. And Gotcha just released a sit down scooter, so that people don't feel so uncomfortable on a stand up scooter. So there's going to be an evolution of services, and all of it goes for mobility as a service. So mobility is freedom in a lot of ways. So if I have an app and my app has car share, scooter share, bike share, it could be integrated into a trip planner, but the point is to give people options,
Right.
right? Instead of having to, I mean, you used to live in Miami. Having a car here is essential. Like, you've seen it in Fort Lauderdale. You,
There's no
you can't
option.
live without it, right? So, but there is that high speed train, the Bright Line. There are other options, but if you don't have access to that, you think that you just need to have a car. So I
Right.
can go on and on. I'm very passionate about getting people out of their single occupancy car. It's about the environment at the end, Fina. You know, like if we are able to do one little thing to help the environment, I mean, you see on I-95, people, every single car has one person.
Mm, you're right.
So,
Right. Now, I was thinking about community and how this type of exercise builds community in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. I first saw it when I was in the car share world. And when somebody would rent, or when you were a Zipcar member, when somebody would hold their reservation and somebody else was walking up to get their car, a lot of the times people said, "Do you need a ride?" Right?
Yeah.
It also creates connectivity between communities. And it also allows people to share something with other people. So it's not just mine. So it has created community in shifting their perception of transportation, also shifting the perception that is also available for them. So a lot of micromobility companies have to serve the underserved population that are not part of the planning process at the beginning.
So it creates
So
somewhat of equity, really.
100%. And you saw it with the dockless bikes. Those bikes were being stolen because people need them. It wasn't because they were trying to be mischievous. It's because they actually need a transportation option.
Yeah.
And so once you saw that need, well, the company I used to work for, the team would go to the person and say, "If you need me to put a station outside of this area for you, we will, but that's for everybody." And little by little, people start, not everybody, obviously, but the majority of the people were like, "Yeah, I'll share. Like, I get it because it's for my people." So people are identifying it, hopefully now, not just for the rich people that can afford it in the city core, but also for the burbs, right?
Right.
Boston just launched a bike share program for in Arlington and in Watertown. Like you would think Watertown, like
But it makes sense because in some of those places, like Lexington, they don't have a really great bus system. Or
exactly.
they don't have a commuter system. They have to drive to, I think, Cambridge or Arlington in order to get to Boston. So it
Mhm.
does make sense that you can use it. And I hadn't thought about not so much the point to point, but from your home to the commuter station. You can
That's
ride
right.
a bike.
That's right. And it's up to the micromobility companies to work alongside the cities to identify those planning those spots so that there is organization, there's responsibility, and it's an ingredient between both. It's not just the company and it's not just the city. And the best part is that the younger generation, because they're more conscientious of the environment, they're noticing that perhaps I don't need a car right away. That when I'm on campus and I'm a freshman, I can't park my car, that perhaps I have a scooter and bike share to get me around, right? Or the shuttle that the university has. Like
Mhm.
there are other options so that when they graduate, they might work in a place where they don't have to rely on a car. Not to say that we're against cars, right? Because I think it has to supplement one with the other. But yeah, it's that first last mile.
But you know, the point that you made when you, because you do see just one person in the car.
Hmm. Yep.
You do see one person,
Yeah.
and you know, not that I in the mornings I necessarily want to be with anybody, um, but you know, it makes sense. And if you're thinking beyond yourself, how
Hmm.
can you do things that would be in support of community, of environment, of all these other options? So it does become it becomes a viable option at
Yeah.
that point.
And, and this COVID time where people aren't using their cars, I think a lot of people are going to say, do I really need it? Right? Now that the environment has gone back to working from home, there's going to be a little difference in the way that people think about getting around, which is great, right?
Yeah.
It's actually a beautiful kind of reset to the transportation option. It doesn't take away the buses. It doesn't take, but it also gives the cities an opportunity to say, I'm going to invest in this alternative transportation because a lot of the times they feel like, oh, it should be free or the private companies need to take care of it. No, it's your responsibility. It's an offering for your community, right?
Mhm.
So it has to be, yes, accountability from the private operators, but also the city or the university has to say, we need to invest in this as well. Like, it should be a smart conservative choice, not just, oh yeah, we're going to put millions of dollars, but there has to be funding for this moving forward. It's not going away. And I'm a bicyclist, so I don't ever foresee bikes going away. I do see like maybe 2-seater bikes, or I don't know, adaptive bikes for people that are handy capable. Just other options for people, because as you know, when you go on your morning walk, and when I go with my dogs in the morning, to just be outside is everything. Just to be outside for a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. Totally agree. It changes your perspective. And honestly, you and I have talked about this. I've been looking at whether to buy a bike or just use what's here. And, I've been trying to get you to give me a bike. That hasn't happened. But
listen, the bike I have, you don't want to have. It's been used and abused. But yeah, I hear you.
But I have to say, I wasn't that person that thought about that.
Right.
But I am
because
now.
you had a car. You in Boston, you have your house that's out in the burbs, right? So you have your house, unless you would, like, I remember one time when we started working together, we both lived in Brookline.
Yes.
Right. So
Yeah.
in Brookline, you just hop on the train, like, you don't even think about it.
Right.
You don't think about having a car. I mean, for the 11 years I was in Boston, I didn't have a car up until 5 years in.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't even a car. I shared my car. It wasn't even mine. So
and then you're progressive.
Well, I didn't need a car. And I was a student. I was also very poor. So I couldn't afford a car. And Eleanor Chin, who became my friend, and she's a mentor to all, was in school with me. And when I started my event planning business, right, when I was still at Simmons College, she goes, you can't be using Zipcar all the time. You need your own car. So her husband, Kevin, who's a beautiful soul, his father passed away, and he gave me his car. So I had this car, and I felt like I was still in high school to getting this car. And it was really interesting, because I grew up in a car culture. In Miami, when you're 16, you get a car.
Plus, like, it's so hot here.
Oh my gosh. You can't even be on, you need an e-bike, because even if you're pedaling, you die of heat.
And like I said, so I've been here, I'm going to be here a few weeks, and I've seen people riding their bikes every morning. There's a bunch of people, not in the afternoon. So I think about how this, and I'm bringing it back to when do you use the bikes? Because obviously in Miami, the heat is unbearable, starting at 10 o'clock all the way until 6, right? And then in Boston or the Northeast, since I'm only talking about the East Coast, the winters are horrifying sometimes.
Yeah. We have a system, so that's why the scooters are so popular, because you just stand on a scooter and just go. You're not even moving. So that's why a lot of people use, that's not the reason, but the majority is that you don't have to even move. So if I'm a professional in a suit, I'm going to use a scooter to go from one place to the other, right? Because unless I live in England or in the Northeast, where it's a little cool breeze and I'm going to warm up as I'm pedaling. But we have a system in Burlington, Vermont, that runs 12 months out of the year. Like, it does not halt. People get used to their environment. So like here, you'll see people ride their bike in the morning and late afternoon. People adapt to their riding patterns. So, I mean, obviously, if it's a snowstorm, we have to we winterize our vehicles and we take them out. But it all depends on where you are. But I absolutely love the fact that you're thinking about getting a bike, number one, whether you buy it or you rent it, right? You have options now. Before, the only option was, I'm just going to buy a bike and make that investment. And what happens is that bike sits there like my organ that's sitting right there, like my organ.
I mean, you mean your closet?
It's my closet, my organ closet, where I hang stuff. And I'm going to start playing the piano. haven't had time, but it sits there, no, like alerting you. You have a bike shop.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
absolutely right. It makes so much sense.
Yeah.
For health reasons, it makes sense. It
Mhm.
makes sense in, when I start using it, I know that I'm going to expand my community because I will be part of a different community, bike riders. I'm
Yeah.
excited about that.
And it's interesting because there's bike tours, there's bike tourism. It's another world out there. There's bike advocates. There's the League of American Cyclists that work on, like, you get cities and universities get awarded, whether they're gold, the winners, or silver level
Wow.
bike friendly cities. So there is like accreditation with all of this. It is a real deal. And when you realize the importance of biking, or this industry of micromobility, and the people that have worked really hard for it, you look at it differently when you're inside of it. Obviously, when you're outside of it, you say, oh my God, how annoying those scooters. You don't think that maybe that scooter's serving someone.
Yeah.
Mind you, I don't agree that scooters should ride on the sidewalk where people are walking. I don't agree.
Oh,
I
that's
don't
where
agree.
I'm going to totally do it.
But it's hard on the, because you're on the sidewalk and you go
Oh,
like in between,
yes.
on the street, you're like, you keep on going. It's really great. Um, but I'm also excited about the sit-down scooter that Gotcha just is putting out in markets. We have launched in markets like Memphis and Dallas, and the sit-down scooter is cool because it's almost like, when you go to the grocery store and you see that person, that
Yeah.
older person that shouldn't be on one of those cars, but God bless them, they are. It's something like that, super cool, right? And it has a big basket in the back. So if you're going to the market, you get on your little sit-down scooter, which we call a cruiser. You get on your cruiser, go to the market, pack it up, and then you're not even pedaling. You're just cruising. It's the coolest product I'm really excited about.
So, Lisette, we only have a few minutes. So, before I let you go, if you're part of a community and you want to bring micromobility to your community, what's the best way to do it?
First thing to do is contact the city, the transportation or sustainability department. Find out if they have any bike ped planning or studies that they've done. Connect with them. They want to hear from you. A lot of cities put out surveys to identify whether or not they want bike share or scooter share. A lot of ordinances in city government, it doesn't allow electrified vehicles. So just be a voice. Ask your city councilor, or go to the transportation department and ask. There's a lot of bike walk organizations that you can identify. Every city has one, and they're advocates for change in infrastructure and policy and safety. So either bike walk organizations or go to the transportation department at your local government.
Super. How about if they have something in place, but they haven't connected with a bike share or scooter share company, can they reach out to your company?
Yeah, for sure. So Gotcha Mobility, it's ridegotcha.com. We've been around for 10 years. It was founded by a Floridian. His name is Sean Flood. And now we've gone into an acquisition phase where we're now we're a public company. We're traded in the Toronto Stock Exchange under Last Mile. So now we're led by Max Smith and Matt Tolan, our COO. And I have to tell you, by all means, Lindsay Gray is the Senior Vice President of External Affairs, and she is my mentor and has taught me a lot about this world. She's been doing it for a very long time. So Gotcha Mobility, if any city is listening to this or university, reach out to us or ask Vina for my information. Happy to connect or just share information.
I love it. Well, Lisette, thank you so much for joining us in the ROAR webinar series on micromobility and creating community. Thank you for
You're welcome. Thank you for having me and for being interested. I heart you.
We'll talk soon. Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.